Good morning and welcome to Special Needs Network's Women's History Month celebration. I am Ariba Martin. I'm the CEO and president and the founder of Special Needs Network. I am super excited to be celebrating women across this country, particularly those women that have been impacted by the pandemic, those that have lost their jobs, those that have had to fill in as teachers and as administrators, as our kids, many of whom weren't able to go to school during the pandemic. There are so many incredible women that we all can recognize during this period. Of course, there are those historical women, women like Harriet Tubman, women like Constance Baker Motley, who's been in the news lately, those women who are pioneers, who shattered the glass ceiling even before we were talking a lot about, or at all in the case of Harriet Tubman, glass ceilings. And then there are those everyday women, women we see working in grocery stores, women we see working at the mall, delivering mail, women who are answering phones in doctor's offices, nurses who are providing care to loved ones, women who are working in professions throughout our economy. Women like my good friend, Vice President Kamala Harris, who are showing us what's possible. So there are so many women that we can all celebrate. And I want to give a special shout out to the women of Special Needs Network, the team, the staff, the women that work tirelessly to bring programs to this community, women who give so much of their time, their talent, and their treasure. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for serving women, children, and families across California. Then there are the women on the board of Special Needs Network. See, organizations like this, nonprofit organizations, we could not do the work that we do without dedicated board members. Again, professionals who give of their personal time. They don't get paid, they don't get compensated, but they give so much of their talent and their treasure to organizations like Special Needs Network. So thank you to all of the women on the board of Special Needs Network. And then there are our parents, our parent volunteers, those women who show up at events, who pass out food, who pass out toys, who make phone calls, who encourage other mothers, those that sit in IEP meetings, that go to regional center meetings. Those women are the backbone of Special Needs Network. I can't start naming names. You know who you are. There are too many of them to name, and I'm so grateful to you for being on this journey with me. Many of you have been with me from the start of this organization, and you keep giving and giving and giving, and you keep giving back. And because of you, this organization has blossomed into one of the premier autism, disability rights, and social justice organizations, not just in California, but across the country. And as the president and founder and someone that works in the media, that writes books and have all of these jobs, I've had the opportunity, the privilege to travel throughout this country and to share what Special Needs Network is doing and to help other organizations throughout the country create similar programs, similar models. I am so honored. This month, I will be joining women across this country at a special Vice Presidential Women's History Month celebration that she's hosting at the official White House residence. I'm super excited to get to see my friend and all the women who will be gathered in Washington, D.C. to celebrate the accomplishments of women. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Ketanji Brown Jackson, soon to be Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. I have witnessed the last couple of days of the confirmation hearing that was held by the Senate as it relates to her nominee as a Supreme Court justice. The nomination came from our President Joe Biden. He made a commitment that he would nominate the first Black woman to the United States Supreme Court, and he made good on that promise. And he could not have picked a more qualified jurist than Judge Brown Jackson. She is, I'm proud to say, a fellow Harvard Law graduate. She's an undergraduate from Harvard University. She has served as a federal district court judge. She served as a federal appellate court judge. She has served as a public defender for the federal system. She's worked in private practice. Her accomplishments are just so vast. And when you compare her even to others that sit on the Supreme Court today, her accomplishments, her experiences are vastly more than some of the peers that she's going to be joining. But I have to say, as proud as I am as a Black woman, as a Black lawyer, of the nomination of Judge Brown Jackson, I'm equally disappointed anger really is the best emotion to express. What I've witnessed, the sexist and the racist attacks that have been hurled at Judge Brown Jackson during the first 2 days of her Senate confirmation hearing. Men, white men, and the one white woman senator, Senator Blackburn, attacking Judge Brown Jackson, her credentials, her credibility, her sentencing on very serious cases, efforts to make her pass almost this last racial test to prove herself worthy. But thank goodness for Black men like Senator Cory Booker, who came to the rescue almost at the 11th hour on the second day of this very contentious and disdainful display by some of the senators on that confirmation committee. Cory Booker speaking in such an emotional way, affirming not just Judge Brown Jackson, affirming her position, her role, her worthiness to sit on that court, but also affirming Black women across this country. He looked at her straight on and said, I look at you and I see my mother. I see my cousins. I see Black women that have struggled to get where you are. And he says, I know personally, some of my colleagues maybe don't understand, but he said he knows what it must have been like for Judge Brown Jackson to accomplish what she has accomplished. And she talked herself about how nervous and anxious she was when she first stepped onto that Harvard University campus, not being the second generation of storied Harvard graduates and feeling uncertain about being there. She talked about that work-life balance and said to her children, I haven't always gotten it right. I haven't always been there at times that were important to you, but she said, I love you to my bones. Everything about me, every fiber of my being, she expressed her love for her two daughters. And I know there are women out there today that could relate to everything that Judge Brown Jackson said about being a mother, about accomplishing, being the first, as she will be, as she enters this role as the first Black woman on the Supreme Court. So I just want to say, as we celebrate Holly Mitchell, Los Angeles County Supervisor Holly Mitchell, again, a trailblazer, a phenomenal woman. As we celebrate Keisha Nix, the vice president of the Lakers organization, another phenomenal woman who is demonstrating such leadership. As we celebrate Professor Julianne Malvo, the dean of students, ethnic studies at Cal State University, who is helping us understand why it's so important in this moment when we have so much pushback towards teaching Black history and Black studies, why what she's doing is so important. I just want to thank all three of those women. I want to thank the performer today. I want to thank all the women that are participating in this program. We see you, we love you, we appreciate you, and we are so incredibly proud to take this opportunity to salute you. So on this Women's History Month, as we close it out, make sure that you call the woman in your life, your mother, your grandmother, your aunt, your cousin, that girlfriend, somebody that has been there for you, and make sure that as you are climbing, women, as you are climbing, make sure you are also lifting. That as you climb that ladder, that you are lifting other women up. Because what we know for sure is whether it's Ketanji Brown Jackson and the hundreds of women that signed a letter that me and a colleague from Harvard Law School, my good friend Ginger Chavers, circulated, got 200 everyday women across this country to sign on to a letter that we submitted to the Senate committee. Whether you are a woman at home watching these hearings, or you're reading about them, or you're watching them on social media, one thing we know for sure is that together, there is nothing that women cannot accomplish. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Holly Mitchell, Chair of the LA County Board of Supervisors, and I'm delighted to join the Special Needs Network in celebrating Women's History Month. I was asked to share my advice for young girls and women on pursuing our goals and owning our power. Well, the first piece of advice I would say is, just don't give your power away. Think about the number of times per day that you let someone else take your ideas and go forward, that you say something in a meeting that a man repeats 10 minutes later, and then all of a sudden it's the best thing since sliced bread. Or this whole notion of the number of times per day women apologize for seemingly no reason. I say, own your power and lean in. And the earlier in life young women learn that lesson, the further I believe they will go. So for this Women's History Month, let's celebrate not giving our power away, owning our bright ideas, and making sure you get full credit when you have the idea that will save your organization money, that you have the bright idea that will elevate the work your organization does. Again, happy Women's History Month.
I'm Dr. Julianne Malveaux. Before I say another word, I want to thank Ariva Martin and the Special Needs Network for inviting me to be part of this Women's History Month collection. Let's call it a collection. And I want to just say how important Ariva has been, just not only in terms of her work, but also in terms of her advocacy, in terms of her commitment to equity. And the fact that she has an autistic child has caused her to amplify the needs of autistic children everywhere. And we're grateful to her for that because often these children are very ignored. Now, I'm Julianne Malveaux. I am the Dean of the College of Ethnic Studies at Cal State LA. I've been there since July of 2021, and I'm very excited about my work. I have 3 departments reporting to me. I have Pan-African Studies, Asian American Studies, and Chicano Latino Studies. And I have the charge of creating a Department of American Indian Studies. And so this is what we need to do, is talk about higher education unusual, not as usual, to talk about the needs of folks who are at the margin, bringing them to the center. And that's the crux of my work. But it's been the crux of my work for a very long time. I ain't ashamed to tell folks that I'm 68 years old. I know women are not supposed to tell their age, but what else am I going to tell? I wouldn't tell it if I looked it, but since I don't look it, I'm going to tell it. But I got my undergraduate degree from Boston College in 1974, my PhD from MIT in 1980. I've taught at the university level, but I've also been a TV and radio commentator, having had my own radio show and television shows. Over the years, I've also worked as an independent consultant, have authored several books, write a weekly newspaper column, and still today do a weekly radio program at WPFW FM in Washington, D.C. It's important to have a Women's History Month, and it's so important to lift up women. How come? Because we are so often marginalized. You pick up a textbook. Where are our accomplishments? I think about Abigail Adams, who was the wife of the second president of the United States, John Quincy Adams. And she wrote to him as they were writing the Constitution, don't forget about the women. And she wrote that because at that time, of course, and not until 1920, did women get the right to vote. So although we were contributors, although we were helpmeets, although we were workers, we still did not have the right to participate in our democracy. As recently as 2000, I remember the 2000 election. I wrote a book with a white woman who was, Deborah Perry is her name, and we used to call each other cornbread and white bread because cornbread, Black folks, white bread, and sometimes I called her rye bread because she's Jewish. But in any case, I remember her going up to New Hampshire during the Democratic primary in 2000. And I'm laughing about it retrospectively. She told me about the number of women who said to her, I'm gonna vote the same way my husband does. And so sexism, racism, and sexism are part of the cake that is baked into America. You can't slice the cake without getting the racism, the sexism, the ageism, the homophobia, all those isms that we chafe about, but they're still there. And so when we celebrate women's history, we're also talking about dealing with the women. I want to tell you all about just a couple women who are important to me because there's so few women who have doctorates in economics. But I was blessed to have one of them put her hands on me. Dr. Phyllis Ann Wallace was the first Black woman to get a PhD in economics from Yale. She also was the first Black woman to get tenure at MIT, where I got my degree. She brought me and another sister, her name was Linda Datcher, we were both grad students, into her circle. She wrote a book called Black Women in the Labor Force, and both Linda and I are listed as co-authors. She was just intense about us being successful. She made it possible for me to work at the Council of Economic Advisors under President Jimmy Carter. And she wrote so many important things. one of her first books, Pathways to Work, talks about how Black women had found professional success and how they moved into work. But there were so many other books that she wrote and so many other things that she did. And I just had the blessing, the phenomenal blessing of having her. But she and I both have a foremother, and her name was Dr. Sadie Tanner Moselle Alexander. She was the first Black woman to get a PhD in economics ever. And she actually also, there were 3 Black women who got their PhDs on the same weekend in 1921. And very interesting because each of them oftentimes said they were the first, and sometimes they would say one of the first, and it was a phenomenal accomplishment. But we got to get over that first mentality sometime, because first just means you open the door for more. But Dr. Alexander, I got the privilege of getting to know her daughter, Ray Minter Alexander, just an amazing woman in her own right. But Dr. Alexander's doctoral dissertation was on the migration of the Negro to Pennsylvania, 1916 to 1919. That period in our history was called the Great Migration, where millions of Black people left the South and came north for better opportunities to escape segregation and for many other things. And Dr. Alexander never got the opportunity to teach economics. She went on to get a law degree, and she was one of the first Black women to get a law degree. And then she became all that in a bag of chips. She practiced law with her husband, Raymond Alexander. She had 2 daughters, and she just was a contributor. So those are the shoulders on which I stand, and I'm very grateful to stand on those kind of shoulders. I encourage people, first of all, to understand the shoulders on which you stand. They don't have to be famous, and they don't have to be first. Some of the shoulders you stand on are sitting right in your house, sitting up in your attic. One of my first economics pieces was on private household workers, also known as maids. And I keep a picture in my desk. My great-great-grandmother, Addie Hawkins, was a maid. She worked for a family in Ames, Iowa. It's a very funny family story. She married my great-great-grandfather. He was a Pullman porter, but she told him she was not going to marry him until he brought his check home so many weeks in a row, because apparently he enjoyed gambling. And she said, well, I'll marry you as soon as you stop gambling. And he did. And they did, and we're the result. But basically, we called her Mamu. Mamu, my grandmother's mother, was an amazing lady with such dignity. The picture I have of her, she's sitting on a bench in Ames, Iowa, with a hat on, just looking lovely, and with all her dignity. And what we have to claim as Black women is our resilience and our dignity. The fact that we've always had it, whether we were scrubbing floors, picking cotton, whatever we were doing, we still had dignity. And so when I look at Mamu and I look at the evolution of my own career, I think about the fact that I ended up studying something that she did. And that it's just, how you exhale when you feel it come full circle? Well, that's kind of what I used to do when I looked at Mamu over my desk and thought about her. It's really, again, interesting family tree that I love so very much, because I've just been so blessed. My mom, who made her transition in June of 2021, actually was one of the first African Americans to teach at the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss it's called. They did not even allow Black people there at a point in time, but she went to join the faculty there in 1972, I think. I was an undergraduate, and she made a number of sacrifices, but she wanted to teach there for many reasons, including the fact that she was passionate about social work. She was a social worker. She would bring people home. People always ask me why I have so many clothes. Here's the answer. When Mommy would bring people home from public assistance, she would give them my clothes. They could even have the tags on them. She'd say, well, Julianne, you have lots of clothes. You don't need them. This person has never had a new sweater, so I'm going to give it to them. And I'd sit there and scream and cry. And then she said, you need to learn compassion. Well, this is why I'm single, live by myself in a 4-story house. And, but I mean, that's kind of being flippant, but it's kind of what it is. But my mom was a social worker, a professor, an entrepreneur. She had a deli. Her deli failed because she gave away all the profits. Because if someone came in and said they were hungry, she would feed them. And social work and entrepreneurship don't necessarily combine. But so let me say a couple things about entrepreneurship. Well, more importantly, about following your dream. Black women have been taught to play small. We have to play large. Do not ever let anyone diminish you. You got a dream, go for it. You want to be a social worker, do that. You want to be an entrepreneur, do that. Entrepreneurship is challenging, but it is one of the ways that your brain and your purpose can combine. In other words, I see so many sisters now who are doing things with entrepreneurship, but the bank is going to give you a hard time. So think about how you're going to find the financing. Your friends might give you a hard time. Well, I remember when I went off on my own, I was a professor at SF State, then I was a professor at UC Berkeley. Then I decided to kind of do my own thing, freelance it. And my mom said, well, where are you going to get your benefits from? And I said, I'm going to earn them. I can pay for health insurance. And so, a lot of people are afraid. Don't be afraid. Fear is the worst thing that you can ever embrace. My favorite biblical verse is 1 Corinthians 16:9. I'm going to do great things, and there are many obstacles. Depending on which version of the Bible you get, might be I'm going to do good and effective things, and there are those who oppose me. Understand the and. If you are effective, my sisters, if you are effective, there will be those who oppose you. If you are effective, there will be an and. But, let's think about the women in this Women's History Month who have made such a difference. Let's start with Shirley Chisholm, who ran for the presidency of the United States on the Democratic line. Or let's talk about Angela Davis, professor at UC Santa Cruz, who also, she ran for, I believe, vice president. Again, not on the Democratic line and on the Communist Party line. Let's talk about Barbara Lee from the Bay Area, or Maxine Waters from here in Los Angeles, or Sheila Jackson Lee, who I adore. Sheila has taken on the mantle that John Conyers put out there. NARC, the National African American Reparations Commission, on which I serve. But here's what you need to know about Sheila and Dr. Conyers. John Conyers introduced H.R. 40, Bill for Reparations, every congressional session from 1989. Sheila has taken the baton from him, and now we have 215 congressional co-sponsors of that legislation. We only need 3 or 4 more votes to get it to pass. Now, let's be clear. We know that if and when it passes the House, it will not pass the Senate because the Republicans are not going to let it happen. But that doesn't mean anything. What it means is that we're acknowledging the debt that America owes to Black people. And in acknowledging that as well with Sheila, we're acknowledging this Black woman's profound leadership. I will say one more thing, talk about lynching and Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells was a noted journalist. She went to Rusk College in Mississippi, in Holly Springs, Mississippi. When her parents died of, I believe it was cholera, she moved to Memphis and commuted between Memphis and Holly Springs, taking care of her younger siblings. She started her own newspaper, but she was run out of Memphis when 2 things happened. One, she refused to get off of a first-class car where she purchased a ticket. They took her money. Then they told her to go sit in the Negro car. More equally importantly, she wrote an editorial where she talked about lynching and Black men and white women, and said to white men, if you're so worried about the virtue of your women, then you need to watch them a little more closely. In other words, there were consensual relationships between Black men and white women that people did not want to acknowledge. Ida B. Wells was friends with a man named Tommy Moss. She was actually a godmother to one of his children. Tommy Moss was a postmaster. He was all this stuff. He was really a fantastic brother, postmaster, church deacon. He started a grocery store called People's Grocery in Memphis. Why? Because there was another grocery store and the white people were mean to Black people. They were nasty. They talked under Black women's clothes. Tommy said, we can do better. He opened a grocery store, which meant that the white grocery store started losing business. So what did they do? They created a conflict. 2 little boys got in a fight over marbles. And the white men went to the Black grocery store with guns over 2 little boys getting into a fight over marbles. They did some shooting. The brothers did some shooting, and the white man was shot. He was not killed. He was shot. The next day, the brothers were all arrested. It was Tommy Moss and 2 of his friends. And the next day, they were lynched. Ida B. Wells recounted this story, and she began to chronicle lynchings. She wrote a book called The Lynchings Chronicles. There were several. She traveled all over the country writing about lynching. But back in Memphis, they took her press, they ran her out, they promised that she would be lynched herself if she did not leave Memphis. But this is what Black women are made of. This is what women are made of. Tenacity, temerity. I got the nerve to call you out. This is where we are. And so this is why Women's History Month is so important. I always tell people history belongs to she who holds the pen. In other words, if you don't write the story down, you won't tell it. So I'm challenging everybody who's watching this. Tell your story. Tell your mama's story. Tell your grandma's story. Write it down. Publish it. Make us all proud. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Keisha Nix, and I am the Vice President of Charitable Affairs and the Executive Director of the Los Angeles Lakers Youth Foundation. I am so excited to be participating in Women's History Month. Women's History Month really means, it means a lot to me. It's 1 month out of the year that we get to really celebrate and champion women. I think we should have Women's History Month every month, to be honest. But it is, the one particular time of the year that we really get to, reflect back on women who have paved the way, for us, women who are still paving the way, women that are breaking down glass ceilings and barriers. And it's just a time to really celebrate and to support one another. That's really what Women's History Month means to me. As far as myself, I am proud to say I am the first Black female vice president in the history of the Los Angeles Lakers. And that is significant, being a Black female, being a woman in a male-dominated industry, sports. I have definitely faced some challenges. I faced challenges when I was in corporate America. I was at Merrill Lynch and Bank of America for 21 plus years. And again, that was another male dominated field. And so I look at these challenges, as just a part of my journey. It's hard to just, signify or signal just one single one out. But because it happens, basically every day, that you're faced with something because you are a woman. And so I just look at it like, okay, here we go. I look in the mirror in the morning and I say to myself, you got this. Because it's gonna come, and you just have to know that. And that's advice that I give to some of the younger women that I mentor. Not to discourage them, but I really want them to be prepared. You have to be strong. You have to be resilient. You have to persevere in these fields and career paths that we've chosen that are not typically chartered by other women. So we're breaking ground, we're breaking barriers. I like to say that I am kicking down the glass ceiling while wearing my red bottoms, because it means you can do both. You can be a woman and you can, do all the feminine things, but you can also be strong and smart and intelligent. And so I don't want, I don't want people to think that the two can't exist. Sometimes people think you have to trade one for the other. If we're too strong, then we're labeled aggressive. And that's not so. I like to think of myself as just passionate. I'm passionate about the community, passionate about the work that I do in Los Angeles with our youth, with nonprofit organizations. And so if some people think that I get aggressive, that's not it. It's just that I want to champion whatever the cause is. I want to give my best. I bring my best. And I'm going to, fight for whoever it is, and whatever the cause is. And so again, that just means that you're passionate, and that you care about, more than just yourself, and you really want to make a difference. It's funny, I have a lot of mentors. I mentor, but I have mentors myself and sponsors and champions. And I found that a lot of them were male, not as many female. And I had to ask myself, why that was. And there was a time when it was challenging for me to find other females that were willing to help and support me in that way. And thank goodness that is not the case today. I do still have male mentors and champions and sponsors, but I also have females that are in my corner that give me advice, that give me counsel, because I'm literally, in some uncharted territory. Again, being the first in anything is not easy. It's definitely not for the faint at heart. I love what I do, but I'm not perfect, and I still have room for improvement. So I look to, strong females who have, conquered some of the barriers that I have to go through. And I literally have reached out and said, hey, can you help me? Would you mind, mentoring me or giving me advice from time to time? We never get so high or so big or so important that we don't need someone to look up to. So I look to women who have done, what it is I'm trying to do. They're in places and spaces that I aspire to be, and that's encouraging. I will tell a little story about, kind of the opposite of that. I remember my career at Merrill Lynch. I was a single mom. I'm still a single mom. I have one son, Kyler, but I was working really hard, and my supervisor at the time, I want to say, gave me, an increase. And the manager of our branch was a female. And she said, I don't think she deserves this. And I don't, I don't know why you pay her so much. And I thought, wow, another woman who knew that I was a single mom and that I worked really hard tried to stand in the way of me, aspiring to another level, or just making a little bit more money. And I thought, right then and there, that was a great example of what I would not do when I got in the position, that I would not do that. So I've turned some of the negative things that have happened into positive things. And so when I meet young women, I try and support them and champion, what it is that they're doing. I would never stand in the way. I'm not insecure about who I am or my job. I don't want to do this forever. So I'm hoping to find and groom, the next person, whether that be male or female. But sometimes I think we get, so stuck on, our careers, our job. We feel like it only belongs to us and that we don't make room for anyone else. And that's not how I see it. My work speaks for itself. My reputation speaks for itself. The legacy that I'm building, it's there. No one can take that away from me. And I know that there's so many more things that I'm going to achieve, that I'm going to do. So I don't want to stand in the way. I actually want to do my best, but I want to bring somebody else up so that they can one day say, they're the vice president of charitable affairs at the Los Angeles Lakers. So we can't be so insecure or hold on to things, so tight that we don't make room to support other women. I think that's really important. As a single mom, raising my son, it was definitely challenging. And I say to, all moms out there, whether they're single or married, it's okay to have that mom guilt sometimes. Sometimes you're going to be the last one to pick up your child because you're working. Sometimes you're going to miss some things, and that's okay. I tried to be at everything, but it wasn't easy. And I had to call on my village to help me. I used to joke about my son's emergency card. There were so many names on the card because I needed to have resources. I needed other people to be able to pick him up from school. And so that card was filled front to back. And so I say to, working moms out there, it's okay to ask for help. The smartest people raise their hands and ask for help. So don't look at it as, you not being able to accomplish or being weak. No, you're strong and you're smart. And that's why you ask for help. But work-life balance, for me, it's ironic. I worked at Merrill Lynch. I would often take my son to work on days when the office was slow, when there was not going to be a lot of people around. Sometimes I did it out of necessity. Sometimes I didn't have childcare. And I remember he'd be crawling around my office and I'd be like, oh my God, like I'm going to get in trouble. But I started at 24 years old. 24 years later, my son started at Merrill Lynch as a financial advisor. And I think about all those days that I snuck him into the office, and it really paid off. So to the moms out there, our children are watching us, and it means a lot for you to be working and taking care of the family and taking care of them. And you just never know, what they pick up. So it's important that we are great role models and examples for our children.
Was it you? Was it me? Through all this doubt, I'm on my knees. Pray, please release me from this feeling. I'm crying out, but can you hear me? I'm hurt, not alone. Trying to remember this house as a home. And though I know that things are different now, I know you'll stick around. Right now it's kinda hard to see. I know you want the best for me. You catch me when I fall, 'cause we've been through it all. And I know it's gonna take some time to mend this broken heart of mine, but things will be alright at the end of the day. I am loved in so many ways. Oh, 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 oh. I am loved in so many ways. People say that truth hurts, but it's made me strong and like a firework. I'm gonna shoot beyond the moon and past the stars to be right where you are. Life is like a maze full of phases, lost in my mind, fighting all these demons for reasons don't understand why, but I know from this we will grow, together we'll rise. Now it's kinda hard to see. I know you want the best for me. You catch me when I fall, 'cause we've been through it all. And I know it's gonna take some time to mend this broken heart of mine, but things will be alright at the end of the day. I am loved in so many ways, and though it's kinda hard to take, you showed me I was no mistake with the love you gave me every day. And now it's kinda hard to see. I know you want the best for me. You can't